All right. All
Yep.
right. We are back for another Other Ink Thursday. And today I'm joined by a theatrical costumer and professional nerd, Megan Jaffe. Hello.
Hi,
You're also
how's it
like the
going?
CEO of Nerdy City, like, that sounds impressive. Like, is it as impressive as it sounds?
I'm very slightly better at making the numbers go.
Right. So that gives you the
So
letters.
since I've been so clever, I get to be CEO.
So, I mean, what is Nerdy City then? Like, just give us some. We're gonna go back in time a little bit, but that's spoilers. That's kind of your brand anyway. But
No, it's true.
what is Nerdy City? If people don't know, right?
Nerdy City has been a number of things and has had a few iterations, but it generally is a what I would call kind of a collective, CEO aside. Uh, I would call a collective of nerds working together to uh, put out immersive products. Uh, Earlier on, it was more live action stuff, and in latter years, it's become pretty focused on the table. Um, yeah, so it's mostly myself and Sean Jaffe, but also Joshua Brain Jaffe, Emerson Crane, Casey Edison, David Groveman, and like a number of people like before and since Gia Grillo, Craig Page. It's like why I think collective is kind of the best term
Yeah,
for
that's
it.
a lot of names. I mean, you said that it started as live action stuff. So, I mean, that sounds like enough people to have a troupe of like performers. Is that why there's that?
So yeah, I mean oh man, the now we're going into the far past. Uh, we we actually started with um uh as a thing sort of splitting off from Eschaton Media, um uh who are the original folks who did Dystopia Rising. And we were uh we had produced a game called Chronos and Ex Arcana, which is a game that can be played both live and tabletop. It's a card-based system, so it's something that you can pick up and put down, uh, depending on how, um, like, what you see is what you get. You're going to be able to be like if you had gone through a threshold into another realm, sat down and like did a tabletop style. If you were just in the space with a bunch of people, then you kind of could pick up your cards and walk around. Um, we were fortunate to play a lot of these in a bar called the Lovecraft, which kind of brought its own scenery. So,
I
um, yeah,
Somebody else was talking about that recently. Probably Sean on
probably.
like an RPG. I think on RPG R&D. I think he was talking about playing at the Lovecraft.
Yes.
So
Uh,
I've recently listened to that episode.
of
So
of sad memory. It doesn't exist anymore.
right.
And we did some other like pretty cool like one shot things. I think our finest work as a sort of live company was we did a Pacific Rim LARP,
Okay.
uh, complete with two Jaegers and a kaiju and a tiny Seattle.
All right.
So
That
there was
sounds
like a
pretty
room
legit.
that was set up as tiny Seattle with a camera in it that was uh uh filmed into the docent or the locent area so people could see what was happening in tiny Seattle from there. Um
So did you have
the the
people out there on
climactic
the
yeah.
battle
So the
the battlefield?
climactic moment, the kaiju Tiburon is fighting Echo Thunderhead, who was the little scrappy Jaeger that had to get put back together over the course of the game. Uh, and the entire cast, which was like 25, 30 people playing this game, maybe more. we're all chanting, echo, echo, echo. And all of us working out were just weeping in the corridor, just openly sobbing because we had been up all night and it was kind of everything that we could have hoped for. But it's
But I
that's
mean,
a burnout heavy
yeah, yeah, yeah,
vacation.
yeah. I mean, this is like I would ask like how did you go from that to like making more tabletop? But then like it's right there in your answer already where you're like,
Yeah.
and then I needed to rest from that for a little while, you know?
Yeah, and it like and part of the reason that the collective has cycled through is people have burned out and no shade on anyone who's
Sure.
like, yeah, I'm done. You can't I can't work long hours for pretty much no pay anymore.
Hmm.
And we had always done tabletop like in addition to the live stuff. But in 2016, Sean and I were driving back from Gen Con specifically, and were bouncing back and forth the idea of like a game set in the sort of weird suburban 80s, um, and started making up this town by like, okay, what deep cut reference can we name this thing after? All right.
Mm.
I want to name the record store Medusas. Can you guess that deep cut? No? All right. Yeah. Well, it's this. And then just bouncing back and forth, driving at like 2 in the morning across the never ending wilds of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well,
and thus
and
was born Remember-X. Uh,
the middle of Ohio isn't much more glamorous, so
yeah, but it's
it's
shorter.
it's
Pennsylvania, for some reason, just
wait.
does. There's something eldritch about the depths of Pennsylvania where it just goes on forever. And I know intellectually that there are states longer than that, but for some reason, Pennsylvania is just never ending in
Well,
me.
Ohio at 10 feels different than Pennsylvania at 2, I'm sure.
Mm, also
I'm
true.
sure.
Also true.
Uh uh so right, so you that so thus begins like what is that one feed into? Like is that the RememberX
So
project
that,
or is that was that
yeah, we
you
had put down Ex Arcana and Chronos with the live stuff, and with the success of Remember-X, it was using a system that had already been written for Tempest Omni, which was like an earlier sort of like little small game. But it just kind of gave us more of an idea of what we could do with just tabletops in general, and like I don't know, just scratched an itch as far as some of the stories that we wanted to tell. And then from there we got into the whole plastic mythology idea, which is what I call the so with Remember-X is sort of generic suburban 80s horror. It's your
right.
Carpenter, it's your Stranger Things, it's the just genre of the time. You make up your monster. You decide what the strange thing is.
That that one segment of the
Yeah.
2000 or the Twilight Zone movie that Spielberg directed.
Yes, exactly. And uh so with the idea of bringing in the cartoons and the toys and those like segments of the 80s as the strange thing, um because like obviously there are specific titles that we remember, like
Yeah,
Transformers or Gem and the Holograms or
yeah,
He-Man.
you got your
But
shelf of memorabilia there behind you.
yeah, oh yeah. I added some of my more pink aisle stuff to it for purposes of this.
Ink aisle.
Normally it lives over there with the Gem Rockstager, but it's backed up against the Transformers today. You can see the big ones up
Oh
top.
yeah, those are some big Transformers.
Big boys. Um, but there was like a spectrum of them because everyone was trying to all the toy companies were trying to kind of fill similar niches.
Sure.
So when we did when we started with Commandroids, it was obviously um, transforming robots. So Transformers from the get-go, GoBots. There's
Hmm.
Voltron in there,
Of
which is
course.
a different, style of it.
You got to have a
Um, yep.
mask. The
Gotta
the
have Mask. Robotech is there. There's some in there. Older
hmm
stuff like Shogun Warriors. I think there's some Zoids buried in there. Uh, but like that's all of that kind of got folded together into this uh into this pastiche world
right.
of um which is, it's while it borrows from all of these, it's still its own original kind of setting that harkens to all of them. And
Yeah.
so that was
It's
the start of obviously what had to be a series because there was more that we had to
there's
go
more toys.
through.
More toys. So I mean, there's so many things that I want to ask you about this, and so the you called it the plastic renaissance. Is that what you called it?
Plastic
Plastic
mythology.
mythology. Because I looked up because I know you have a term for it, and there's radical shadows is
Yes,
also
Radical
mentioned on your
Shadows is
website.
the series that is directly connected to the plastic mythology.
Okay, so it's like two terms for the same sort of thing,
A
or
little
it's
bit,
like
yes.
two
Like Radical Shadows
layers.
is the name is like the proper name for the series. And then plastic mythology is what it's
It
about.
is part of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And and so like with the name, I mean, like I said, there's too many things. So
Oh yeah.
with the name Radical Shadows, I mean that kind of like that's kind of like so the thing that you said that I think is really amazing because like lots of
Mhm.
people have been trying to do, especially as all of us who grew up in the 80s are now
Yeah.
like making the media, right?
Hmm.
Many people have revisited the 80s and the kids on bikes is a
Hmm.
genre, not just a game,
Yep.
and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
There's many other people who have talked about that and insert that discussion
Nostalgia
here.
is a fruitful
Uh,
mine to draw from.
right. But the thing that I really thought was interesting about the way that you said you're twisting it is that like, okay, so it's not a psychic, it's not a monster, it's not a magic thing. The toy is the weird thing.
Hmm.
And that is not a that I don't know if that's standing it on its head or putting it on its side or balancing it in a weird way, but it's definitely like a different take on that sort of like weird 80s thing.
Good. That's what we're
At
hoping.
least to me, right? Because it's not like a fake CERN under,
Hmm.
under the ice or whatever. I mean, those things are those are those are the twist of the other
Yeah,
things you
and
had to.
honestly, like all of those things, that's part of the thing with Remembrance is it is just that wide open for what you want to fill in as for the weird thing that happens, like the mystery that's going on in your otherwise mundane little existence. You can fill that blank in however you want to. The Radical Shadow series comes pre pre-filled in with this whole world that your character has connected to um in one way or the other.
Right.
uh
And
with Commandroids, the characters are actually uh connected to another entire character. Like they're the robots, the Transformers, are their own person. So it's you're essentially playing two characters.
right.
And there is a switch back and forth. And that's going to, but that's just with Commandroids. That's how that particular game and system is works with Holomatixx, which is the next one, and then with Midkiria, we're going to approach it from different ways because so with it being toy focused, one of the things that we've tried very hard to keep in mind is some of the toy diegetics, like how you play with those toys.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, which is interesting because like it can be um it's definitely a thought process to try to be like, okay, this is how I was playing with this when I was younger.
Right.
How does that translate into a set of rules or into a setting? And we're doing it various ways. With
Yeah.
commanders, we have the second character, and they have their own sort of history and all of that. And we've got rules for transformation and switching over. With Holomatixx, we go into uh, doll play, um, or what I like to come up with terms with stuff. I'm like one of the name. I find that this can be sometimes a uh, just position within game groups is the namer of things,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
or like you have to go through like however many adjectives to like get the right name for the power or the like the person or the thing.
Right. Right.
I love that. So I do this a lot with sort of the concepts. And the concept for this one is the pink aisle, because the pink aisle is kind of
Hmm.
it's beyond just doll. It's technically gender neutral. Yes, it's the aisle of stuff that was marketed for girls, but
Hmm.
anyone can have played with pink aisle toys or have
Yeah.
engaged in pink aisle play. Um, and
I believe you have coined. I do not think I've encountered these terms before. So I think you've
yes,
successfully
I
successfully
do
coined new terms.
I do pull them out whenever, because it's the easiest way for me to kind of sum up is my experience and some shared experience, because I've we talked to a number of different people. One of the other things that's been interesting about doing the Radical Shadow series is going to stepping outside of the gaming convention world
Hmm.
and talking to people at fandom conventions for the toy or the
Yeah.
cartoon. So we've gone to TFCon, we've gone to BotCon for Commandroids, and I've gone to GemCon for Holomatixx. Um, and it's a really interesting way to kind of approach the thing.
Yeah.
But that there is a little bit of commonality of, so you have these sort of stereotypical toys, and the idea behind them is that you dress them up and like you have a little house and it's very sort of domestic, when in reality a lot of the story that went into them was much more unhinged. Like there was betrayal and murder and like people, it's a lot of falling off of cliffs. um
Sure. Sure. Uh, it's an easy thing to do. Um, I'm kind of interrupting your flow here, but because
yeah, no.
I don't want to get lost. You said that like the way that you play with the toys is something, and so the first thing that I mean, this is kind
Hmm.
of like what is the project of the plastic mythology and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
like you talked about the different ways you play, and like I had a bunch of Ninja Turtles, and I had
Hmm.
some GoBots and stuff like that, and the ones that had like the flipping arms would always be doing like body slams on people because you could put the one in the spring-loaded arms and you let them flip over the other side. Whatever. I mean,
Hmm.
it was a third person play, right?
Yes.
Is sort of what I imagined. Um, but then like you're talking about like, and I don't know if there was a Jim and the Holograms branded microphone or whatever, but I definitely had the kind of microphones that you would uh you had like they had the resonant like filament at the bottom or whatever, and you could like
Yeah.
talk into them and it expanded your voice and made it sound weird or whatever, and so that would be like, no, I'm the performer, not I'm playing with A- and I had like a helmet that you would like, it would a voice changing helmet or that kind of stuff. Is there
Mm-hmm.
it, so that's where my brain went when you were talking about different ways of playing with the toys. So
So
is that something that you've explored, or is that
so
not
what
what you
that is
meant?
actually, and this does sort of, the toyetics of uh the character tend to be in one specific stat. That's just sort of the way it's worked out with things so far. So with Commandroids, it's the matrix stat. So that's your special like item. Like if you have a gun that's just attached to like a winch or something that's just
Yeah.
attached to you. If you're a triple changer, if you're like the the physicality of your toy is in or what your toy would be
Hmm.
is in that stat. With Holomatixx, that's your house. So
Okay.
um, some have a sidekick, like a little animal friend. Some have like a hair thing. Some have a glow. So it's that one is based on the, like you said, like the sort of flippy uh like some of them are can like walk on the like are double jointed can walk on the ceiling and stuff like that like the have
Okay.
the powers of the toys that is your sort of inherent thing to be able to play with um
So it does sound more weird than I'm imagining. Like I mean, when I imagine what you're going to be play, and we should talk about this more.
yeah yeah
But like, it sounds like Holomatics is weirder than I imagine.
it's
Or at least has the
so
potential to be.
it absolutely has the potential to be and actually that leads me into so the other way that I the rules way that I am trying to bring like my memories of just the breadth of play from with Pink Isle Toys is so one of the things we have in all of our Omni System games is the relationship table. Um, just to because the way we keep saying it when we spiel at cons is when you're at in your D&D game, everybody meets in the tavern for the first time and you kind of move on from there.
Right.
In these games, because there's this mundane setting to start with, you know each other. You've been in the same school, you've been in the same like club, um, and the relationship table kind of gives you that baseline to play off of. With Holomatics, there's going to be a range of relationship tables. So you have the option of going like uh super light and comfy, um more like having a more weird like high powered game like some like early shojo stuff uh, more like anime
Hmm.
um some straight up soap opera shenanigans like Gem itself um some more like uh involved band type shenanigans like you'd start to play Fleetwood Mac with your toys and then straight out mayhem where if you want to play the kind of game that like is the most unhinged things that a like 8-year-old brain can come up with like you have that option and you kind of get that to start and you can flavor your game depending on like the type of play that you want to
Yeah.
uh get into because
Uh,
that was also the sort of thing. Well, are we playing mommy and daddy? Are we going to play or are we playing like I don't even know if there was a name for uh the sort of more soap opera shenanigans, but like there had to be at least a bit of an agreement. There were generally just like arguments at points because we didn't have dice. But
so it, so I think we need to back up a little bit. And
yeah,
you need
probably,
okay,
probably. I'm throwing a lot
so
of
give
things.
us you've talked about Pink Isle
Yes.
play and
Hmm.
that and obviously like the via the color schemes and sort of the reference
Yes.
points like commandroids is the stuff that was targeted I'm gonna
Yeah.
say it's the blue isle stuff,
Yeah.
it's the
One of the
robots
Blue
with
Isle
the
things. Yeah.
guns and the
Hmm.
spring-loaded missile launchers, and
Yep.
there's a certain sort of person that in the 80s those toys there's a certain sort of person who was in the commercials for those toys.
Yes.
And the
Exactly.
same for now. So this is the obvious next step after you do that is
Hmm.
this other game, which is the Pink Isle toys. And so pitch us that game. What is that? What is Holomatics? Because you've already been talking
So
about some of the details, but
yes, no, I
step
started to get
back and
into the Holomatics without giving the
give the
sort of
high,
elevator
yeah,
pitch
give the elevator
for
pitch for it.
Holomatics. So Holomatics is an 80s game of glamour and glitter. You
Glamour and
play
glitter.
a secret pop star. You were a normal teenager Um, and then uh, you stumbled into the world of the flip side and the VideoSphere, um, and now have you and your friends have this super powered band through which you can help the Earth keep its heart against uh, attacks by opportunistic aliens and uh, kind of capitalist nonsense. And in the meantime, you get to rock out.
Nice.
There are video battles with the Shriekers who are these chaotic forces of rock. I mean, their music may be better, but there's only um, so far to go.
Right. I mean, this is okay. So, I mean, could please finish up, but because like
Yes.
uh,
Um, yeah, and so you get to ugh, sorry, my brain just shut down.
no, it's fine. It's fine. So you're giving me such a like, oh, right. Okay. So this is like how Emmett Otter has to play. He plays the jug band music, but then the band that they're up against at the Battle of the Bands is like an
Yes,
actual rock band, right?
yes,
That's what you
yes.
like. Their music is cooler, but you
The
don't want
River
to be
Bottom Nightmare
them.
Band.
But
Yeah,
you know, and I'm also thinking
exactly.
about in the Chipmunk movie, Chipmunks Around the World or
Alvin and the
whatever,
Chipmunks is
you've
also another part of this.
you've got
Josie and the Pussycats. There's like this whole, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
you've got like in like the rival, is it the Chipettes? Is that what they're called? They're like
Yes.
no doubt because Pink Floyd played in Pompeii, they did a sequence where the two bands are like climbing through some sort of Roman ruiny situation, rocking out versus each other or whatever, you know. And
Hmm.
I don't usually think about that sequence, but like you're talking about these sort of like video battles. Is that kind of like, am I picking up on the right vibe? This is what you're trying to
Yes. So
do?
that's part of it. So there's another game, another cartoon, much more cartoon than a toy. I don't know if there were ever actually figures for it, honestly. That is a huge influence on this, called Kid Video.
Right. This is on my list to talk about because I don't know what this is. So you need to tell me all
Okay,
about it.
it's that show was a fever dream of the 80s. I am always delighted when anyone remembers it. A lot of people are like, I thought I dreamed that show. This was stuff that they could get away with before a certain level of licensing, where essentially all of so it was this band that gets sucked into this music video world. Um, and they can't called the flip side, and um they can't get they're trying to get out, they're trying to get home, um and they're fighting against this essentially evil radio exec called Master Blaster, um
All right.
and
That's some
they
from something
use
else, but
there's always like yeah, evil execs is a big theme. um
sure.
God, when did we lose that? uh
After Captain Planet got canceled, probably.
that is very real. um
Because it sounded like if you're trying to save the heart of the world, I mean, there's a bit of Captain Planet here as
yeah,
well.
definitely. uh um And so they would play like popular music videos, like Lionel Richie, Duran Duran, Cyndi Lauper, all of these things. So you can't, it's hard to find, you can find it on YouTube still, but you can't release a CD of it or like a DVD of it. Oof,
Yeah,
dating myself.
because
Because how would you get the rights for all of
right,
those things now?
you'd have to
Yeah.
really know a lot of people to get the rights
Yes.
for that.
You'd have to get a lot of people to it's a little like Roger Rabbit, except music videos instead of
Right. Huh.
and also
So
just some of it is music videos themselves, because there were a lot of like duels between rock bands in or like rock bands versus the world or the man within music videos themselves.
sure. So the kid video was basically like, it sounds like it was just like music television for kids. It was like
Kind of, yeah. It
it
had
just like, and now we're having an adventure in the flip side, and now here's a music video that's just
pretty
from
much.
ASCAP. Here it is, you
Yep.
know, or Okay. Okay. That's odd, but I mean start them young, right? I mean that was the
Hmm.
80s. That's part of the whole we're talking about the evil execs, right? Start them young.
It's true. It's the irony of the 80s is such a forefront part of all of this because is absolutely all of these toys and shows and stuff that were connected were obviously this whole commercialized thing because Reagan deregulated this, that, and the other. But the they just happened to make this space for imagination and
Right.
for play that was really fertile in a lot of ways that I don't think anyone expected. Um,
Right. I mean, it's so many of those like retrospective sort of interviews that they get now where they like talk to the people who invented the
yeah,
turtles or
yeah,
they
like
talk to the people who invented He-Man or whatever. They're
yeah,
just
Toys That
like
Made Us has been a huge influence on all of this.
exactly. I mean, that's that and Imaginary Worlds cover is a podcast that covers this kind of stuff sometimes too, where it's like
Ooh, I'll have to check that out.
they're just uh, th because like you said, it's okay, so licensing is a thing. There's no
Hmm.
regulation. That means like you in the office, you have until tomorrow to design 12 characters for us to like mass produce toys of. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, sir. And then like
Well, but also
some
a
some
lot
guy
of the
goes
time they were
home and just
going to
comes up with a
Marvel.
bunch of stuff. And it's so
Yeah,
individually and weird because it's just one guy getting picked out of a lineup of like ad executives to like come up with some stuff, you know?
but also they were going to Marvel. Like a lot of this was them just saying, "Hey, Marvel, can you come up with specifically for Transformers, but like with other stuff too?" They would like go to comic book companies and be like, "Hey, can you make us a plot for this?"
Hmm.
And I'd be like, "All right,
Yeah,
sure."
right.
Well,
Right. We're coffee in and creative
yeah.
ideas out, you know?
So one of the unsung heroes, I think, of the sort uh of these cartoons is a screenwriter named Christy Marks, who was the showrunner for Gem and the Holograms, but wrote on everything like G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, She-Ra. She was all over the place. And like it really was able to get so the mandate for Gem was for it to be a girls show that boys wouldn't turn off when it came on in between their like after their show.
Right.
So there were a lot of explosions and a lot of like there was some serious mayhem in Gem.
That's hilarious.
The
I
Misfits caused just so much property damage.
so I one of the things I wanted to tell you is that like, I've said that I had
Mhm.
uh Transformers and I had GoBots and stuff like that. And I even had I don't even know what they were. Did they come from? I don't know where they were. They were something less even than GoBots. They were like on the third tier down. I had some
Oh
of those
yeah,
too.
the
I don't remember what they were called, but maybe because of that, right? Because I've already
mhm.
played out all the stories. Like I don't have any. Commandroids is not like one that I'm like, ooh, I got to play that, right? Because I
Yeah.
feel like maybe I've already played those. But because I've
Mhm.
only seen like an episode of Gem and the Holograms ever in my life, I'm like, I've been excited about this. Like, ooh, we're doing Commandroids, but it's Gem and the Holograms, and I'm like, great, sign me up. I don't know anything about it. So I think that's I think that's more about me as like a person who doesn't know the tropes. I'm like, I want to find them
Mhm.
out, right? So you're telling me that like the Misfits and there's a bunch of explosions, and I'm like, I do vaguely remember explosions in the one episode. I believe the episode I watched, they were in Venice. There was a lot of like
Yeah.
falling in the
Yeah, no, there's
water
like
and
all this kidnapping. There's I think they actually brandish guns at a certain point.
uh,
Um
as proper 80s shows do.
yeah.
Lots of
But like
guns.
I don't know. John maintains that the Misfits are more menacing than Cobra, and he's not always he's not entirely wrong. Um,
So I have another question about kind of I want to ask you about themes maybe a little bit here in a
Yes.
second, but I have another
Yeah.
question about the content itself. So like
Hmm.
you talked about the flip side, the video sphere. Uh,
Yes.
is this sort of like is how much because I know that like in the 90s, like when my younger siblings were watching cartoons, there were things like
Mhm.
VR Troopers and there was the Virtual
Yeah,
Boy system and stuff like that. So like is there like a bit of that too that the video sphere is sort of like an is sort of like a cyberspace analog? Is there a little bit of
a little
that
bit of that.
sort
Like
of that in
it's
there?
sort of coming into there, but what the idea of the video sphere is, as we treat it, is that it's essentially as the atmosphere is a bubble of
Mm,
gases around the Earth that is produced by and consumed by the creatures on Earth. The video sphere is a media bubble around the Earth
right.
that is being produced by, but also consumed by the creatures on it, and that Earth's particular videosphere has started drawing attention from other parts of the universe, and has attracted creatures called various different creatures, the earworms, and the compellers, who are another antagonist within the game. Um, uh, so a lot of references.
Yeah, it all sounds like
To a lot of it is finding sort of the common threads through stuff. Commandroids, on one hand, is sort of easy because it's robots, robots, robots.
right, right, right.
Holomatixx is more like, okay, so it's the music thing, it's also the secrecy thing, and like the music video world. Um, Buckaroo Banzai, I consider to be, oh God, if you haven't seen it, that's,
No, no, I've seen it.
oh, you've seen it.
I
Buckaroo
know
Banzai,
Buckaroo
I
Banzai.
consider to kind of be part of this world because it's this guy who technically has a straight day job. He's a surgeon who also has a rock and roll band that he
Mm-hmm.
travels around
Mm-hmm.
with, and they solve things.
Cowboy
And
sidekick.
yeah, and the red lecture, like, has to deal with the evil red lectroids, uh, which to me also echoes They Live,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is another movie that has to deal with like the power of media and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um
So I think this is a perfect list of things that you just said here because that's one thing that I want to like ask you next about this. So like there's obviously the you're talking about going to toy fairs and like
mm,
Gym Con and stuff like that.
yeah.
There's obviously like just the pure like at the surface level, you're like, we're doing this game, it references this stuff. If you love this stuff, this game is for you. And it's sort of like, I mean, that's
Mhm,
there's that level to the pitch, right?
mhm,
Um, but it sounds like and at least in you as a designer that there's like a lot of stuff below that pitch or under that pitch or the it's a Trojan horse situation here where you're like, oh yes, this is a fun game about being sucked into a world of video where you will confront the like the terrible impact of deregulation that uh caused the media landscape to implode and now like
damn it, you figured us out.
is that is that accidental or a conscious choice or like
No,
what?
it is a conscious choice. So uh the thing is, with dealing with like these mythologies of your childhood as an adult, you kind of have to up the stakes
Mhm.
because you now have seen more bad shit in the world, and like there is more scope for uh what an antagonist is, other than just someone who's ruining your fun, essentially. So there is this sort of under the hood horror aspect in all of these Radical Shadows games. So with Commandroids, our horror touchstone was David Cronenberg,
Mm.
because there is some body horror and and some like of the interaction of man and machine to that. And
I
so
get that.
that
I
is
get
that
that. I think
darker
I
that
missed that
darker
from looking at
aspect.
the art, but I get it when you say
There,
it.
if you flip into the Nemesite section, um the so the good guys, the Symbitrons, have a symbiotic relationship with their pilots. So it's one that takes into account the personal uh boundaries and like just persona of the pilot. The Nemesites essentially use humans as batteries,
Hmm.
and
It's more parasitic instead of symbiotic.
yes, absolutely, and like just will use the human body itself as parts. Um, yeah, so there is that sort of horror aspect, and with Holomatixx, it's Carpenter, um, and also
Yeah.
to a certain extent Dario Argento. Um, just in the like saturated colors of it, the sort of uh, push of um, the artistic world. Like Suspiria is one that I've gone back to a few times while thinking of this. Um, and when sort of art is pushed too far. Um, so, but that is part of the reason why specifically with Holomatics, I wanted the spectrum of relationship tables.
Hmm.
So you can use it to play the sort of surface, softer, more gentler game where you're just kind of playing rock and roll with your friends, and like more of a Josie and the Pussycats game where you're like solving some mysteries and having a good time, to like a much more psychological thing where you're really up against these cruel uh forces, and you might do some cruel shit to to get to the other side of that.
Hmm. Yeah, that yeah, I mean there's a that sounds neat. I like that. I like that as a you mentioning they live and like that sort of the way that's a lot of I mean media often
Mm.
comments on media and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Despite being media and especially something like, Carpenter, he had a lot
Mm-hmm.
of success,
Mm-hmm.
but also he had a lot of not success and
Mm-hmm.
he was always sort of an outsider and I guess remains so. And, yeah, I mean it's commenting on the system from within the system and that kind of a stuff. So bringing in that element of it to the sugar pop veneer of the video sphere or whatever, it's a
Yeah,
fascinating combination. It's fascinating. I mean it's fitting. It's so fitting. I was gonna
yeah, because I feel like it's there. Because like again, the Misfits, it is only by virtue of the fact that it's a cartoon that they weren't murdering people left and right. Because they're dropping like lighting equipment on people, they're sending like cutting brake lines, they're doing all of this like legitimate mayhem. Um, that is, it's glossed over in some of the same way that GI Joe was,
right,
where
everybody,
oh,
yeah,
you see them parachute
the
out of
the
the
parachute
thing,
out.
but
Yeah, you
like
always see the parachute.
this is some deadly stuff that's
Right.
happening.
Do the I mean, this is sort of like is the how threatening is the game? I mean, I guess that's one of those things you can probably dial. There's probably a dial for
That
that in
is
the
one of those
rules
things
about like,
that you can
are you going to have
dial up
plot
and down.
armor or is this, are
It,
there
it
ways
it
to,
also, it very much depends on who's running it.
yeah.
I tend to run a much more cozy version of everything. Um uh and you know, Sean gets more into the kind of epic battle of it. And uh the other people who have run it have taken it to different places as well. Like So, but part of it is because it does have this particularly girly pop veneer. Um, I want to make it up front that you can go places with this, and you can also just go straight down the line and like, okay, you're just normal teens. This has happened to you. Go. Like,
Hmm.
where will this take you? If you're open to just exploring the space sort of as is, like,
It's, I
go
mean,
forth.
yeah, it's was it the Runaways? Was that the name of the movie that was I know
That
Alia
was
Shawkat was in it for like about 30 seconds. I'm trying to remember the name of the main person. It was about a girl band, but it's
yeah,
all about
that was the
the
Runaways.
executives are creating this act, and like of course they
Mhm.
actually have talent, but are they actually going to get to do what they want to do, or are they like, I mean, that kind of a story, right? I mean, that's all the
Part
way up to
It's
like,
funny,
can we
part of
blow
the
up
real
the alien transmitter to reveal the truth? I mean, like there's a wide range of stories that are on offer, I guess.
part of the true superpower of uh of the Holomatixx is that um besides having powers of illusion and like um sensory stimuli, um they also have access to the video sphere, so technically they can put videos out onto the broadcast without having to go through a record company, which is huge.
Sure.
And there is a good guy record company who
Mm,
is like in onto the whole secret
yeah.
and is on their side and looking to help them out. Um, as one of the things that I learned from GemCon is that originally Jerica was just going to be a regular person, but in testing, moms were dissatisfied that she didn't have enough of a like job, like enough of a career,
Mm,
because Barbie has every career.
hmm.
Um, and so they made Jericho a record executive, and also the head of a charity, and also the head of an orphanage. Um,
Perfect.
so it came into this whole that the play of Barbie into all of this has
Yeah,
been
we didn't even mention
we
Barbie.
haven't touched on that yet.
It's
So Barbie
Barbie's
is
never
her
been
own.
hotter, right?
Yeah, and she's never been hotter. But she's also so the interesting
As a
thing about
property, not as
oh
a
that
visage.
yeah
Like,
the interesting thing about Barbie is Barbie has no villains. So
true.
Barbie's villain is Barbie.
Hmm.
When you play with Barbie,
Oh, right, right. You've
you
got
fight against other Barbie.
right.
So that was an interesting thing to consider as part of this, which is sort of what the Misfits are, but they're like dressed up to be menacing. Like they're
Right.
meant to look like out there and something that you can recognize at a distance as sort of a threat, as
Yeah,
it
yeah.
were.
They got a different color palette. So they're
Yeah, exactly. But with Barbie, Barbie just Barbie fight Barbie, and that was part of some of the unhingedness of it. Is you just have these two regular kind of pink dolls, just like they didn't lose limbs. Kens were the ones who lost limbs. This is another thing about Pink Owl Play is that the construction of Ken dolls was shoddy,
hmm,
or not even necessarily shoddy, but broke down way faster because their arms and legs were attached together by uh, rubber bands, which would
hmm.
degrade
Yeah.
and snap. And uh, the Barbie limbs were actually like hinged into and attached into the body. So most of my I actually didn't have a lot of Barbies. I played with Barbies at my friend's house because she had like two sisters and just buckets of them. But it was like all Barbies and only a couple of
That's your
Kens.
Cronenberg stuff. Buckets
Yeah,
of Barbies.
uh, yeah, the horror of the like I believe we did have a trunk Ken. Like there was a Ken torso that just lived in the trunk of the Dreammobile.
Uh, all right. So I'm gonna
Anyway,
try to. I got a couple more questions before we
yeah,
we
yeah,
want to
yeah.
wrap this up.
I'll
So
go on about this for
we
ages.
right. We've been going on for a while, and I'm
Yeah.
and like I mentioned, with the movie, Barbie is a hot commodity. Like there's a lot of, people wearing pink at
Mm-hmm.
the award ceremonies and stuff like that. So like it's a perfect time for this Pink Isle game to be on Kickstarter, right? I mean, that is where it is, right?
Yes.
That is, we're recording
Yes.
ahead of the launch, but like when it releases, you could go, if you've liked any of this discussion that we've had, you can go get it right now. Where can people go get this game
You
right
can
now?
get it on Kickstarter. Look for Holomatixx, a new wave order on Kickstarter, and you will be able to get it in digital or in hardcover, hard copy
Okay.
version. So check us
And
out on Kickstarter, and if you like it, pick up a copy.
and
Pick up 3 copies.
I assume like Commandroids is not a small book, so is this like going to be like a
This is going to
nice
be smaller.
similar chunky
Our
book?
reach was a little outside of our grasp with giving androids. We tried to fit too much in there. This will be it'll be larger than Remember X, but it will be a smaller book than Commandroids.
Okay, well that's
But
still a couple hundred page gap,
yeah,
a couple hundred
yep,
page difference in there. So it'll be
yeah,
a good sized book. It sounds
yes.
like.
Um, the one thing that I do want to address is that it will be compatible with Commandroids because
Mm,
the ultimate ideal with Radical Shadows is that you can have a toy box play, or
right,
you can have a transformer that's in the game with your gem figure with your He-Man, because the next
right.
release will be Space Barbarians. So that's
He-Man fits in the car next to Barbie in the convertible.
exactly. Um, so that's the ultimate goal. But
Awesome.
yeah, I'm
So
excited.
we'll definitely have links to that in the description of this
Yes.
video when it goes up, and so it should be there now. But you just said what anticipating my next question, right? Is like, the toy box play. What other things? You mentioned one earlier, but it went by so fast. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Not
So
Yeah, you always seem to think. I mean, you're not even done with Holomatics, but people are
I know.
asking about the
Well,
next one
that's the
already.
thing
But
is
I know you got a
we've
whole thing.
actually
What are some
been
of the other ones?
we've been sort of running in this universe, games in this universe for like over 5 years now. Like these games have been run for some time. Um, so the next big one will be Myrmidons of Midkiria, which is the space barbarians. So He-Man, She-Ra, Blackstar, Thundar, Silverhawks,
Yeah, I was gonna say a little bit of Silverhawks in there.
Thundercats, obviously.
Thundercats. Yeah.
Um,
All right.
Battle
So
Beyond, some Battle
bring
Beyond the
in
Planets in there.
Pirates of Dark Water.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh, Also, upcoming will be one of our short, we're going to do a zine game, not as big a monster as the Full Radical Shadows books, but we're going to do Wasteoids, which is like the toxic waste creatures of the 80s
All
and
right. All
90s.
right.
So, your mutant turtles, your Toxie, your Garbage
Mm-hmm.
Pail Kids, your Mad Balls, like all of the gross toys
Yeah,
together.
yeah. Gosh, I had various of those as well.
And there are other things that show up and may make an appearance in their own games at some point, but we in our head there's this whole universe of things. There's the Rainbow Riders, which are some of, like, how there's a scale power wise
Yeah.
of when you have a joint universe like this. Rainbow Riders are, prismatic animals, horses, bears, things like that.
Yeah.
To an adult, they are this terrifying cosmic being. To a kid, they are an adorable friend.
Mm.
So, like,
Oh,
they're these
so
super powerful beings
that's
whose point is to teach the youth about the value of friendship.
yeah. I didn't finish my thought earlier when I was talking
Oh
about the
yeah, sorry.
radical shadows. Like
Hmm.
this, what you just said there is amazing because that's kind of encapsulates the idea of the radical shadow. I mean, it's 80s,
Hmm.
so it's got to be radical, but
Yeah.
then like there's a shadow current under it and stuff like that. So like, yeah, prismatic, incomprehensible being that wants to tell you to be nice to each other, encounters you encounter that differently depending on whether you're a trusting 8-year-old or a jaded 40-year-old
Yep.
old. I love that. That's good. That is good. That's a good idea. Like obviously I ideas are the easy part, but that's a good idea. Bringing that home is that's the challenge, right? So, but
Hmm.
if you've been
Yeah.
working on it for years, and so
Yeah.
I got to
No,
put
it
in.
is because like it changed. It has changed over time. This like Holomatixx specifically, like in order to sort of hone it to where we really want to get it, we have had to change the rules a number of like just refine the rules as
Yeah,
we've been going. Um, I'm really happy with where we've gotten to now. Like a lot of the last year was spent in much more intensive like getting it beyond the concept into something that other people can play,
right,
not
right,
just the ones who have had it living in their heads
sure,
for however long.
right.
Um,
Oh, well, it sounds great. I'm excited for you to have it out there, and I'm excited to check it out when it launches in my future, but is the past at the time
in
that
our
you were watching the
future,
video. Um, the last thing that I want to ask you, Megan, is where can people find more about Nerdy City or you on the internet if they want to know, like, okay, the Kickstarter's there and that may take you
yep.
there, but where else is you got?
So we are findable as Nerdy City on most of your social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky. Find us as Nerdy City. All of our products are available on Drive Through RPG, and probably some more. But we also just have a website, which is www.nerdycity.com.
Excellent. Easy enough. Okay. I'll put some of those in the description of this video as well. Megan, thank you so much for your time today for talking to me about the
Matthew, thank you
Holomatixx
so much.
and the plastic mythology. I am a part of the target demo, and so it gets me excited. But hopefully, with I'm very interested in the other themes that are able to be explored there. So hopefully that other people are interested. If they're not in the target demo, those themes will apply. Again, thank you,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah, I've had the Holomatics games that have run like Guar games or Guar videos,
that's
depending on the interests of the players.
sure. I mean, it's all possible in the video effects realm.
Hmm.
Uh, right. Anyway, again, thank you, and thank you all the people watching this video. If you like the video, comment on it, and all those things that you do on social media to be notified in the future when I do more cool interviews with people like Meg.
Yeah, follow this guy. He's great.
All right. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.